Hello, fellow psychology faculty. This is Brian Riches. I'm sorry I can't be there with you this evening. I am teaching an in-person class on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so that is what I am busy with at the moment. So sorry I couldn't be there with you, but I wanted to share an instructor standard, specifically seek development opportunities with you. So I'll start off with the definition that we have in our handbook, and it's essentially to increase proficiency in our respective discipline, in teaching practice, and in mastering course tools. So I wanted to dive into each of those in a little more detail and give a couple ideas that I had about them, probably things that you already know, but maybe it'll remind you of something, or it might be something new that you can do in each of these areas. So let's get started with increasing proficiency in our discipline. And so that's essentially the discipline of psychology for all of us. So some of the things I thought of that we could do are things like reading the literature and attending conferences. So that's a really good thing to do, especially when the textbooks that our students are using can be 8 or more years behind the current research, just because of how long it takes to get a textbook written and published. So when we bring the students the new information, that can be really helpful to them when they're going further ahead in their education, going into practice or grad school or any other thing that they do after in the field. So being up to date with the literature and the things that are going on at the conferences in our discipline can be really helpful to those students. Another thing that we can do is talk to practitioners who might not necessarily be writing and doing research on what they're doing, but we can talk to these people that are on the ground, whether they're clinicians or whether they're people that are working in early childhood education, for example. So talking to people that are on the ground, using the kinds of research that we're using as well, and doing our own research is another thing to increase proficiency in our discipline. So we all have our individual areas. Mine's developmental psychology, and some of you are maybe cognitive or social or clinical. Another thing we can do is go to workshops. So there's a lot of workshops offered at different universities all throughout the year. I'm on a few Facebook groups, for example, that I get workshop notifications all the time. But a lot of them happen over like the summer or during winter break, times when it might be a little easier for us to attend these workshops. A lot of them are free or pretty cheap and cost effective, and yeah, they're just a really good idea. Another thing that we can do to increase proficiency in our discipline that can also help our students is try to explain our psych concepts to people in other contexts. So explaining them in a church comment or in an answer to a question at church can really help us explain it in a simple way to other people who aren't used to this kind of discussion. And when we learn how to explain these concepts really simply, it helps our students understand it a lot better too. So if we can make a 4-year-old understand some psychology concept, then our adolescent or adult students in college should definitely be able to understand those concepts. So those are a couple ideas for increasing proficiency in our discipline. Now let's move on to increasing proficiency in teaching practice. And I think BYU Idaho has a lot of supports for this. Things like instructor visits to our classes and coaches that are available to us. So those are individuals who have usually more training than us and more experience in these systems that can go and look at our courses, go through our grade books, go through our discussion boards, how we're grading things, how we're discussing things with students, everything with our course, and give us tips and pointers, things that we're doing well, maybe areas we could improve. So that's a really great resource to increase our proficiency in teaching. Another thing that we can do is ask questions using the online asynchronous discussion boards or even emails. Go to the faculty webinars or use our weekly reports as a reminder of where we could improve in our teaching practice. Student evaluations are also a really useful thing, or can be a really useful thing, to show us what the students would really like to get out of our teaching, or where maybe we are not explaining things as well, or where they might want a study guide or extra things that we could give to the students. So I think BYU Idaho does a really great job at giving supports to the teaching practice. So the last thing is mastering course tools. And so we all know that we're going to be transitioning from iLearn 2 to iLearn 3. And so one of the biggest things with that, I think, is just practice. Practice with these new and changed tools so that we can do them better and use them more effectively. So asking questions will be really important through that process. That can be discussion boards or emails. We can find tutorials on those discussion boards. We can also find those kinds of tutorials on YouTube. There's other schools who have really similar systems to iLearn, and I found some useful tutorials there too. And the coaches again. For example, I've had some help from a coach this semester, and I only recently learned from that coach that I can change the rubrics in iLearn. So, for example, a 20-point assignment had just 2 boxes of point values, so of 10 points each. And so I basically broke that up into 4 and 3 and 2 point sections so that the students could know better, like, what am I expecting from them, and I could grade it more specifically that way. So I would not have known that without a coach. So hopefully this gives you some really good ideas, reminds you of some things that you already knew to increase proficiency in your discipline and teaching practice and the course tools. So I'm sorry again I couldn't be there with you this evening, but I hope you have a great meeting. Thank you.